funding that goes to states. That's how transportation funding has worked in the past, and we expect it to be a combination. So that will be a part of the discussions that are happening moving forward. I have no question, as a person who grew up in New England, that there will be many advocates for that from the New England delegations, but we're not quite at that point. That's a part of the nitty-gritty decision-making and discussions that are happening now.
Can I just clarify, though, as a huge rail supporter, can you clarify whether it is his goal that this infrastructure package will either advance or start a new high-speed rail line in the U.S.? There's only one under construction now.
Certainly high-speed rail is part of an option of investment. And as the president, as you know, as you alluded to, the president is a big fan of Amtrak and railways himself. But we have to work through with Congress what the different mechanisms are for funding, where we fund the projects. Are they through states? Are they through different grants? And so that's part of the discussion and the nitty-gritty negotiation happening in the coming weeks.
Thank you. And just on behalf of two colleagues who couldn't be here, does the president plan to visit Ireland when he is making his trip to the UK in June?
Well, I announced the confirmed parts of his trip at this point in time. I don't have any additional stops to add, but the trip is 2 months away, a month away, 6 weeks away. It's all running together. And if we have more trips or components of the trip to announce, we will do that. But there's not currently a planned Ireland stop on this trip. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. The administration has given itself until, I have a question about refugee admission.
Sure.
The administration has given itself until May 15th to decide whether it's going to revise upwards its cap of 15,000 refugee admissions between now and September 30th. What would be the reason for not going all the way up to the cap that the administration communicated already to Congress of 62,500?
Well, we have every intention of the president has every intention of providing an updated number that will be significantly higher than the number from last week, because the intention he was trying to convey last week, or we were all trying to convey, was that we were resuming flights and that we were overturning the policy of preventing refugees from applying from parts of the Middle East and parts of Africa. But I'm not going to get ahead of the process. We're assessing what's possible. We're assessing that through our policy and legal process, and we'll definitely have an update of an increased number in advance of May 15th.
Given that number, 62,500, was already communicated to Congress earlier this year and is a cap, limit. It's not a commitment to bring in that many people. Why not just go right up to that cap and that limit? What's the reason for not
I
going?
certainly will take that into consideration. You're right, in that this cap is historically aspirational. If you look back at history, most administrations don't actually meet the cap, but it is sending a message to the world about the fact that we are a country that welcomes in refugees, that we want to get our systems and our muscles working in our refugee processing systems, both in the country and around the world. There were some limitations this year that were unique to this year, in part because of COVID, in part because of the fact that the systems were decimated under the last administration. And we just have to take a look at all of that. But I think it's an important point you touched on that I'd highlight, that oftentimes this is an aspirational goal and one that we are just trying to reach to send a message to the world about who we are as a country.
Does the Biden administration see increasing the number of refugees admitted each year as a long-term solution to helping alleviate the pressure on the border, people who come to the United States illegally because they don't have other legal avenues? Does the Biden administration see increasing the number of people allowed in the refugee program as a long-term solution to resolving the pressure on the border?
I don't think we see it through the same prism exactly like that. It's an interesting question. The president's cap, or the president's objective, has always been consistently from February through last week welcoming in 125,000 by the end of next fiscal year. So really what we're talking about here is what the cap is for this fiscal year. And as I mentioned, we've been dealing with a few challenges, but we're assessing that. We will have an increased number very soon. But as you know, a lot of these refugees are not coming, they're coming from all around the world. They're coming from Africa, they're coming from the Middle East, they're coming from many parts of the world. And so while it's all related, because it's representing who we are as a country and welcoming in people who are freeing persecution, freeing challenging circumstances, I don't think he sees it exactly through that prism.
Do you have an update on the number of refugees that have been admitted into the United States under the Biden administration?
Over the last week or so, or over the last few weeks, I think we do have numbers. I'm happy to get those to you after the briefing. We've seen, because of flights resuming, we've seen, an increase even just over the last week. Go ahead.
I just go back to the trip to Europe. The statement today mentions a bilateral meeting with Boris Johnson. Do you know any of the priorities that will be discussed at that meeting? And just relatedly, a couple of years ago, President Biden, before he was president, obviously, said he thinks Boris Johnson is the physical and emotional clone of Donald Trump. Does he still hold that view?
I don't have anything yet to preview for you about the agenda. A lot of it will be dependent on what the world looks like at that moment in time, but there are a range of issues we, of course, discuss with our partners in the UK that I expect will be on the agenda. So as we get closer, we'll have more to say. And of course, the president is meeting with him as a fellow global leader in the global community, and it certainly sends a message about the special relationship we have with the United Kingdom, that this is his first trip.
And also the NATO summit, President Trump always liked to claim that he was successful in getting NATO members to pay more. Does this administration think President Trump deserves some credit for that, and are there elements of his approach that this administration will continue?
I know he thought he invented that, but having worked in the Obama administration, I can say that the objective has always been encouraging members of NATO to pay more, pushing members of NATO to pay more, and that's consistently been the U.S. policy for some time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. A follow-up on David's question on the trip to the UK. Would President Biden like to meet the Queen?
Would he like to meet the Queen? Who wouldn't want to meet the Queen? Don't you?
For that.
We're still finalizing what the details are of the trip. So I certainly understand the interest. I'm interested as well myself, and we will have more to share with all of you as the final details are put together.
Okay, now on the climate summit, President Biden just said that the announcements from Brazil were encouraging. My question, was it enough, and does it change the administration perspective about a possible bilateral climate deal with Brazil, or possible assistance to Brazil related to the Amazon?
Well, first, let me say that reaching carbon neutrality by 2050, 10 years earlier than previously committed and with no preconditions, as President Bolsonaro announced, and his commitment to double funds available for enforcement are crucial steps toward eliminating illegal deforestation by 2030. And so we were pleased that he recognized the important role and we were also pleased he recognized the important role of the private sector in helping us find solutions. We agree with his emphasis on the necessary involvement of indigenous people and traditional communities in protecting standing forests and biodiversity, and with his recognition of the important role of the private sector in helping us find solutions. We look forward to continuing to work with Brazil, to continuing the dialogue, and we feel that his announcement yesterday was a good step forward.
So does it change this perspective about a possible sending assistance? Bolsonaro also asked for assistance to protect the Amazon. So
I have nothing to preview in terms of that, but certainly his announcements and pronouncements were received positively here. I expect there will be a great deal of follow-up, lots of discussions from our climate envoy and others who are leading this effort from the administration.
So it would now be a good time to call the Brazilian president, to have a call between the two presidents?
I don't have any calls to preview for you. There are a number of officials, including our special envoy, who are leading the efforts for follow-up from the summit. It certainly is significant that we had 40 global leaders, some of the world's biggest economies and emitters here over the last 2 days, well, virtually here, discussing this, and there'll be a great deal of follow-up from here.
Jen, one more. So today the discussions at the summit were around clean energy. A lot of discussions about solar energy. Would President Biden consider bringing back the solar panels here in the White House?
At the White House? Oh, that's a good question. I will have to check with probably the GSA. I will have to see who makes that determination, but we are pro solar panel around here, so I will see where things stand on that front.
Last one. We didn't hear much about the connection between epidemic and the deforestation during this summit. And science shows that about 70% of epidemics start with deforestation. So what is the Biden administration doing to reduce the risk of future pandemics emerging from areas experience high deforestation like the Amazon?
Well, certainly addressing deforestation is not just a climate issue. It's a big climate issue. It's also a health issue. And, we are encouraged, again, by the announcements made by the president yesterday. And we will continue to work with a range of countries around the world and through international forum to ensure the world is preparing for preventing the next pandemic.
There are discussions here in Washington about creating a global fund for this specific point. So would the White House support a global conservation fund to stop deforestation in order to prevent future pandemics?
Again, there'll be ongoing discussions with Brazilians, with many of the leaders who attended yesterday at the level of our climate envoy and others who are running point on this. And I'm certain there are a range of issues that will be brought up, but I don't have anything to get ahead of on that. Go ahead.
Jen, does the president still plan to issue a statement on Armenian victims tomorrow?
I don't have anything to predict. I expect he will have a statement, marking the day, but I don't have anything to confirm for you or predict about the content.
And another question, the Israelis are sending a high-level delegation here to Washington next week to discuss the administration's efforts to rejoin the nuclear deal and also to stress their objection to that. How does the White House view this visit, and is it likely to change this administration's position in rejoining the nuclear deal?
No, but I will say that, there are ongoing discussions, or negotiations, I should say, that are happening now. They're indirect, of course, on the potential for a diplomatic path forward on a nuclear deal. While we knew they would be challenging, we're encouraged that there are still conversations between all parties and that they're still happening. As it relates to Israel, we have kept them abreast as a key partner of these discussions or of our intentions, and we will continue to do that on any future visits. Okay. Oh, I have one question. Oh, hello. As we've been doing in our tradition, every Friday, we welcome in someone who can't be here physically with us in the briefing room. So this is Natasha Lindstrom of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. And I understand, not to embarrass you, Natasha, but today's your birthday. Is today your birthday? Oh, we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
I got it. Sorry. It's my birthday today, so it's a neat opportunity to be here. Thank you for
Well,
having
happy
me.
birthday. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us here today. So how can we help you? Or what questions do you have for me? I was going to say to the press corps, but that's not actually how this works. But go ahead. That would be great.
So the pandemic shined a spotlight on many long-standing problems plaguing nursing homes across Western Pennsylvania and nationwide, including facilities that have gone understaffed and demonstrate a history of poor infection control and ineffective management long before COVID. There's also been the trend of historically poor-performing operators owned by complex webs of private equity investors and shell companies, increasingly snapping up cash-strapped facilities across our state and around the country. The setup can make it hard to figure out who's in charge and where the money's going. It also can allow owners to ensure accountability should anything go wrong. And it makes it tough to follow the money, even though the majority of the budgets are federal taxpayer dollars via Medicare and Medicaid payments. Legislation in various forms to improve nursing home quality and transparency has bipartisan support, including bills put out by the likes of Pennsylvania Senators Bob Casey and Pat Toomey, but much of it has stalled for years. Now, during the pandemic, we have seen an increase in scrutiny by the likes of HHS and CMS. In one of the more egregious cases, a federal grand jury investigation is underway linked to some of the operators here in Allegheny and Beaver counties in our region. Can you elaborate on what concrete actions are being taken or will be taken moving forward on regulatory, legislative, investigative, or other fronts to ensure accountability and transparency in the long-term care sector? How can we make sure the federal government, states, and owner-operators are all doing what they should be doing to improve the level of care, even beyond COVID?
Great. Well, thank you, Natasha. And I think there's no question that from the president's standpoint that the impact on seniors, what we've seen happen in facilities around the country, especially in the early days of the pandemic, when there clearly weren't the preparations in place, when there weren't the systems in place, when loved ones couldn't even engage with or reach their members who were staying in these senior care facilities. It exposed what a problem we have on our hands. As you noted, there's legislation that's in Congress, and certainly we will look forward to taking a look at that more closely. And I expect, as we are getting to the stage where the pandemic is hopefully under control, that's our objective in the coming months, that we will all take a look at and reflect on what changes should be made for the future to be better prepared, to take better care of our seniors, to take better care of our communities in the future. In terms of regulatory actions, I'm not in a position to get ahead of that. I'm happy to see if there's anything underway that we would be able to speak to from here. But I think you have clearly identified a challenging issue that's not only a problem in Pittsburgh and in Western Pennsylvania and parts of Pennsylvania, but we're seeing in states across the country as well.
There's a lot of blame game gets thrown around. The states blame owner-operators. Owner-operators say they don't have enough resources. The feds blame the state. Whose responsibility is it to really make sure meaningful change happens, even beyond the pandemic? Because a lot of these problems that were exacerbated by the pandemic but have existed for many years, especially with the lack of transparency element.
You're right. I mean, it's really both. It's not just one or the other. I mean, there are responsibilities that the state has because there's certain funding that goes to the state to deploy in a lot of these areas. But there's also responsibilities of the federal government to look across at different states and see these challenges that are happening, what we can do better by our seniors, what we can do better for the standard of care in these caregiving facilities. I think it's really a partnership in both moving forward. Well, thank you so much. Happy birthday. I hope you have a wonderful celebration this weekend, and thanks again for joining us. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. As I promised yesterday, I promised snacks. I did not bring them in here, but my mother-in-law made homemade chocolate chip cookies for you guys. So there's one for each of you in here. We will do it in a COVID-safe way. But thanks, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.